We're here to celebrate the Nicholas School's 25 years. 1991 was an exciting year. Duke School of the Environment was formed. I graduated from high school. And a new problem was emerging on the political agenda. The problem was global warming. Scientists, of course, had been studying global warming for some time, but politicians and the public were just starting to learn about it. Polling data from that time showed that the public received this new problem with a good deal of interest and quite a bit of concern. Politicians were concerned too, and Congress charged the National Academy of Sciences with establishing the state of scientific evidence and evaluating policy options. The NAS report came out in 1991, and it recommended a strong policy response to this new problem. The report received a warm reception in a Republican White House. So this was a great time to set up an environment school. The challenges we faced were daunting, but politicians and the public seemed ready to confront them. And Duke was ready to train a batch of students, including people like you, to become leaders in environmental policy and practice, to fulfill the university's mission of pursuing knowledge in service of society. It's 25 years later now, and the political context for our work has become much more difficult. Students who are graduating from the Nicholas School now are facing audiences that are skeptical and even hostile to our work. Back to the polling data. So a big area of my research is on public response to climate change. And as we'd expect, after 25 years of media attention and cultural conversation, awareness, self-reported understanding about climate change has increased quite substantially. But our true understanding, Americans' true understanding, lags behind. Less than a majority of the American public recognizes the wide scientific agreement that global warming is even happening. And Americans' concern about this problem, their belief that it's happening, have remained essentially level for 25 years. Americans also perceive that this problem should be a low priority for Congress and the president, lower than just about any other issue on the political agenda. There are several explanations for why we might not think of this as a priority. In my research recently, I've been focused on one of these explanations, and that's our direct experience with one of the most visible consequences of climate change, our daily weather. And so in research that I published this year, I showed that as it turns out, for the vast majority of Americans, the weather over the last 40 years has actually improved. We're experiencing warmer winters, and we're not paying the price with hotter, more humid summers on average. And so while we're hearing that climate change is something that we should fear, our direct experience with it has really been pretty pleasant. Now, many of you are living in DC or you're working in DC, and so you know I'm not really telling the whole story. You know that underneath this stability in public opinion, there's something else going on, and you're right. This is 1991. There was no difference between Democrats and Republicans in their reception of this new problem. They were equally likely to believe that climate change existed, equally concerned about the problem. 25 years later, they're worlds apart. And this polarization, in fact, polarization on climate change is actually more extreme than on just about any other issue in American politics. If you think about those issues where you think polarization is big, it's even bigger for climate change. And it's spread from attitudes about climate change to attitudes about environmental issues more generally. So this figure is showing polling data too. It's from the National Election Survey, which goes out during election years. And what you're seeing is the difference between Democrats and Republicans in their support for federal spending towards different types of targets. And so points near the zero line shows that there's little difference, zero difference between the parties. And so you can see that bottom line is national defense, and Republicans on average support higher levels of federal spending on defense, and that difference between the parties has grown somewhat with time. There's environment. It was, when the Nicholas School was formed, it was a bipartisan issue. There was essentially no difference between Democrats and Republicans in their support for environmental spending. Now you can see that difference is bigger than for any of these other issues. And it's not just the mass public. We also see this polarization among political elites. Here you see it in environmental voting scores for members of the US Congress. So these data make clear that the political landscape for our work has changed dramatically since the Nicholas School was founded. The environment ranks as a low priority for the American public, but it's also an issue that divides us. And that changed political landscape complicates our work for protecting the environment. It complicates our work to pursue knowledge in service of society. Our graduates are now going out and discovering that science does not always prevail in environmental decision making. The farmers, the dam operators, the county commissioners who are making decisions every day about our natural resources often have attitudes about the environment that are shaped more by their partisanship than by their direct work with those resources. And this political polarization shows no signs of letting up. Certainly not this year. It might be with us for the next 25 years. So we at the Nicholas School have to do something about that. And we are doing something about it. What we're doing is we're increasingly training our students to work in the messy, complicated world of politics. We're training them how to communicate across political divides, and we're training them how to understand the political context around different issues so that even in an era of partisan gridlock, they can find opportunities to improve environmental outcomes. The environment is undoubtedly shaped by politics. So what we're trying to do at the Nicholas School now is train our students for the next 25 years to shape politics.